Hello, aloha, and welcome everyone to another wonderful Soul Talk. And I'm so excited for my guest today. Um, we're going to have some amazing topics, but first of all, I'd like to introduce you. It's Allison K Dagney. I hope I said the last name right. Is a thought work coach, author of When Tears Leave Scars, and survivor of 20 years of covert narcissistic abuse. Her goal is to expand awareness of this rampant type of abuse and help others to be emotionally empowered and find inner peace along their healing journeys. Ultimately, Allison wishes to help victims gain the needed strength to escape and survivors the tools to heal, all while helping outsiders gain a better understanding of hidden abuse. Thank you so much for getting started. Hello, how are you? And thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I am super excited for our discussion, and I'm just super thrilled that you've allowed me to be a part of your show.
Thank you so much. One of the things, and I'm just gonna come out with this because this was the first thing when I saw your website and what you're offering, because I remember when I was, researching everything around empaths. So I went into reading, also, of course, reading a couple of books that some authors have written about empaths specifically. And it keeps coming up, and I'm sorry for my audience that I don't remember which one of the books it was, but I remember one of the books actually mentioning that that empaths are very, and this is like, I'm trying to say it as, this isn't, I don't want to judge anyone, but the empaths are very close to the narcissistic energy. So basically what this author back that I read meant was that a lot of times, basically what we know as narcissistic personalities are actually sort of like empaths gone bad, because they know how to, gaslight people. They know, because they feel the emotions and know how everybody else feels, they know how to navigate it. So basically, the general empaths that we know learn how to navigate as well, because they sort of become this people pleasers to everybody. But the narcissist sort of takes it to another level by, getting the reins of manipulating and, moving people around. And that's one of the things that actually caught my eye, was like, oh, we need to talk about this, because I mean, I don't know if you identify yourself as an empath too, but having someone narcissistic in your life that starts to control everything is not an easy way to be, right?
Right. Yeah, no, I definitely consider myself that. And I'd love to know what that book was. You have to find that out and send that to me, because it's
Yes.
really interesting, a really interesting concept, because something that I've noticed along the way, as far as the differences between narcissists and empaths, it is a fine line. And a lot of times, even people who are very highly empathic can even teeter on narcissism. And I don't mean on the way like a narcissist is abusive, but I mean in the way that it becomes an ego. Your ego comes into play so strongly, especially if you get stuck in a victim mentality. And for me, that did happen. And for a long time, it was all about me and all about, the things that happened to me. And I really had to make a transformation to look at myself and really inspect the things that I was thinking about and the things that I was doing in my life and the habits that I had and all of that, because the very last thing in the world I ever wanted to be was in any way narcissistic. And I think it's really important to clarify, right? Because we can't just go in and say, oh, if you're in a victim mentality, you're a narcissist. No, that's not what we're saying at all. It's just that the ego rises up in both, in either, right? It can possibly take over, and we need to get that in check. And I think that's really an interesting concept about what you're saying about how the narcissist has these sort of empathic qualities that they can use in a negative way. But then also we have empath people who may end up, who've been abused or who have been hurt, who can sort of lean in the other direction too. And we have to be aware of what's going on inside of ourselves.
I love that you're saying that, because it was actually part of my own journey. I had a moment where I needed actually therapy in my own life. And I remember my therapist explaining to me how sometimes certain people use the victim, the place of being a victim as a way of controlling everybody else around them. So that, like, because making other people feel bad because they are bad, because they're treating them badly, and so they use that, like you said, the narcissistic side within us that wants to control everybody else, and it's basically a whole game of controlling things. And one of the ways that it showed up, and especially for empaths, I want to share this sentence here. It was, let me just put it the right way, the way my therapist said it. Who gave you permission to be the one in control, or responsible for everybody else's feelings?
Wow.
Right? That hit me so hard. It was like, oh my God, yes. Why? Like somehow in my whole being, something, created this responsibility that I'm responsible for everybody to be happy. Or, when someone's angry, all empaths try to, let's make that person happy. So he or she's not angry anymore. So that's a way of controlling. And I love that you're saying that it takes us to, pause whatever we're doing and turning, I always talk about the flashlight, turning that flashlight towards ourselves and really look into how we're feeling and what we're doing and what we're thinking, like you said.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like a lot of times, at least this was my experience, that for me, maintaining a little level of control, and I know that this is true for people who have high levels of anxiety. When you feel like you have control of your situation or your circumstances, or you're trying to maintain control or trying to impart control on things that maybe are really technically out of your control, makes you feel less stressed or makes you feel less afraid or have less anxiety. But this isn't a realistic belief. This isn't a true belief, right? Because we can't control a lot of things. Only thing that is really in our control is our own thoughts, our own actions, our own beliefs, what comes out of our mouth, what we do, right? It all comes back to us. Like you said, put that flashlight back on us. And I have found that anytime that I'm feeling the need to like want to control a situation, I've kind of gotten to this habit now where I immediately go, okay, what is this about in myself? Right. So I just flip it around and just ask, what is this about in me? Because a lot of times when you do that, you don't need the control anymore. It's just, it disappears, right? It's like this kind of imaginary need. Like I need to have control so that I can feel in control so that I can erase the anxiety or erase the emotions that I'm having. But really, the way that we get through those emotions is to inspect them and inspect what's causing them. So I love that. That's so, so important. And again, I want to reiterate too here that that whole victim mentality thing that we talked about, you were a victim, right? If you were abused, if you were physically harmed, if you were emotionally abused, right? I used to be a victim too, right? It's when we shift from being a victim out of that into being a victor, right? We're no longer victimized by the situation, right? At some point, yeah, we may live there. We may live in that victim mentality for a certain period of time. That may be part of our healing journey, part of the processing that we have to do of the grief and the sadness and the anger, right? We have to process that. But at some point, if we don't move beyond that, we just stay stuck. Does that make sense?
Oh, I love that you're saying that, because this is actually one of the first steps that I try to, teach or show my clients and all the empaths that I work with, because I feel that especially, within the empath realm, or, what we've known about it so far, a lot of people go like, okay, so I'm the victim of everybody else's energies, and I just have to learn to deal with it. That's how it started for me too. When I keep wanting to say diagnosed, but when I found out that I was an empath, the teachers back then that I had didn't know much about them and just said, you're going to have to, find out for yourself or live with whatever you have right now. You're just going to have to learn to live with what it is. but that keeps you sort of in this victim mentality. But the moment you want to step out of it, because we are here on this planet to create so many beautiful things, but we can't do that if we're stuck in that. It's sort of like we can't move, like you said, like you're stuck in that way, and you can't move forward. And to be able to move forward and to step into our own power, we need to get out of that role, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And what's your tagline again? Remind me, is it surf the
Serve your
surf
energy wave.
wave? And that to me is like, I love that. Like when I saw that, I was like, ooh, I love that, because at one point in my life, I remember just thinking about, especially a really difficult part of my life when I was, healing, was like fighting the wave, right? Like just fighting it and fighting it and fighting it. And you just keep getting knocked down and just pulled under tow. And it's like, you got to go with the wave, right? Eventually, if you just go with the wave, it will bring you back in. And when I realized that about my own personal journey, it was so freeing. It was so enlightening. And I think that that's where we give up control, right? We have to give up control. Like I'm not going to fight this wave. This wave is way bigger than me. This wave is way more powerful than me, and yes, I have power, and yes, I have control over certain aspects of my life, but it's when you can reach a level of acceptance, not accepting, someone's bad behavior, not accepting that, I don't mean that, right? I have to be really clear about, we don't have to condone what someone did or anything like that, but accepting this was the reality, right? This is actually what happened, without judging it, right? Without saying this was good or this was bad. Like, it is what it is. What can I learn from it? How can I make myself better and stronger from it? And just ride that wave home. That's just how I feel about it.
I love that you're mentioning that, because it's the second point that I wanted to add before. It's about accepting us in that situation or wherever we are at that moment, just accepting us 100% the way it is, and using the strength that we have. And that's what I mean when, when the wave comes and we're strong, our energy is strong. Those are the moments where we can go on and, change things in our lives. But maybe our wave is retrieving right now, so it's okay for it to retrieve and to allow ourselves to be there, be present with whatever wants to happen at that moment, and then wait for that moment in strength, and it will, like you said, it will bring you back to shore, right? When with all the strength
Yeah.
in there.
Yeah. And I think, acceptance is a really interesting type of concept. And I think a lot of times it gets confused. And for me, it was really helpful to think about the fact that, what was going on in my brain, right? What I was believing, the thoughts that were going through my head might not actually be true, right? And sometimes they are true. And let's just say it is 100% true. And I know for a fact that it's true. Yes, I was abused, right? I know that's a fact. I know that that's true. But what am I making that mean, right? Was I making it mean I wasn't good enough, or that I wasn't supposed to have a good life, or that I shouldn't have been treated that way? Whatever those thoughts were that I was making that mean, right? I couldn't reach acceptance as long as I was carrying those things around. I literally could not reach it. I had to go inside my own mind and start questioning those things. And for me, a lot of times people say acceptance is the first step, but I really believe awareness is the first step. I believe that
Yes.
is the first step.
Yes. No, definitely true, to just be conscious of where am I right now.
Mhm.
And like you said, it's sort of also not identifying with those labels that a situation might have made of you, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I recently put a post up about, I hear this term a lot with narcissistic abuse, of being trauma bonded. And throughout my marriage, I was in that marriage for 17 years, together for 20 years. And I didn't know I was being abused at the time. It was emotional abuse, but I didn't know. I wasn't being physically harmed. And he barely ever even said, I never even heard him say a cuss word. He barely yelled. Had a very soft spoken way about him. And I didn't know it was abuse. So for me, it was really, really, really difficult. And I, once I figured out what this was, right, and I was aware of it, then it was helpful. So, but the reason I'm saying that is because during that time I was trauma bonded, right? I couldn't leave. I thought about leaving and I couldn't leave, and I thought about leaving and I couldn't leave. And so I had this trauma bond. I didn't know, thank goodness I didn't know. Because I think had I identified with it, it would have made it harder for me to get out. So then when I left, someone actually told me, because I was like, oh, I've never been trauma bonded. As soon as I left him, I never wanted to go back. And she said, oh, but what about the 17 years you were married? I was like, oh my gosh, you're right. That was the hard, I probably tried in my brain to leave 100 times. So the post that I made was, if you're identifying with being trauma bonded, that it can actually keep you being stuck because you feel powerless. You feel like the trauma bond has all the control over you and you have no control to change it. So I love to pose the questions to people like, well, what if you weren't trauma bonded? What would you be able to do? And what if this wasn't some sort of unseen mystical force that's tying you to this person? And just pose the questions about like, could it be that it's not a trauma bond and that maybe you're holding on because if you let go, it means something else? And just inspecting your own thoughts and getting into your own mind instead of just accepting the first thing that comes to your brain. Oh, I'm trauma bonded. Right?
Oh, definitely. That resonates so much. Yeah, because why it's like with our thoughts, we don't need to identify with our thoughts. It's okay that they're there, but we're also able to change them and move them into different directions, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the really exciting part that I think is missing for a lot of people, because when you've gone through something really traumatic or really painful, the human body is designed to keep you safe, right? And your brain wants to keep you safe. And there's all these complexities that go around that. But when you've experienced something that hurtful, that harmful, your brain goes into a state of protection, right? And immediately wants to keep you safe. So if you're a little kid and you touch a hot stove, you immediately pull your hand back and you remember, ow, that's painful. I don't want to do that again, right? So the next time you go past the stove, you're a little bit more careful, even if it's not even turned on, right? You're just more cautious. And the same thing happens to us when we've experienced abuse, and those traumatic memories get stored in the neural pathways in our brain. And when that happens, a lot of times this repetitive thought process happens. We've created this habit automatically so that we don't have to think about it, right? Our brain's trying to make life easier for us. So it says, oh, this was really painful and I don't want you to go through it again. So I'm going to just make you think about it all the time. And so it seems like a little like not like productive, but it truly is your brain's way of keeping you safe. So the really important part for people to know is that we have control over changing that, right? So we can actually get into our brains and change that wiring, because we know logically that it's not safe. We know logically we don't want to be in a relationship like that, and that we don't want people to treat us bad, and we're not going to be abused again, right? We know that. We don't need our brain keep repeating that over and over in an automatic way, like autopilot. We don't need it. So we can
Yeah.
get into our brains and start shifting that thought, shifting those things around to make the automatic, when things trigger us or when things come up, that we don't actually have an emotional response to it anymore. And that's where the healing comes in.
Yeah. Oh, I love that because it comes full circle again. As you were saying earlier, that we yearn this control, that we want to control certain things. And that's the thing that we can control. We can control our thoughts and how we feel about certain things. And that's where we, can move past certain things.
Yeah, I mean, that is the way that we can take power back, right? Because a lot of times, especially people who I work with and the clients that I deal with, they come to me with such pain and they just want the other person to stop being such a jerk. And I just want them to be nicer. And I just want them to be this. And I just want them to be that, right? If they would only, then I would be happy, right? But that's not reality. People are going to always show up how they show up. People are going to always be who they are. Would it be great if people would change and see the light and accept responsibility and take accountability for what they've done? Of course it would be, right? But we are not able to control other people, just like you said. So if that's the case, right, we know other people out there in the world are going to show up how they show up and be who they are. That
Mm.
narcissist is always going to be a narcissist. That I use I use the example, a lot of times with my clients, I say it like a barking dog, right? So if there is a dog that's barking and it's annoying you because you're in the middle of, like, let's just say you and me, we're recording a podcast right now. And let's just say there's a dog barking in the background and the neighbor's dog goes out, that we can allow that to disrupt our peace, to ruin our day, to make us angry, to have us march over to our neighbors and tell them to bring their dog in and quit being so disrespectful. Or we can take another pathway and we can go inside of ourselves and start figuring out, well, what is in my control? Can I pop my earbuds in if I don't want to listen to it? Can I take a walk and get away from it? Can I just mentally process it in a different way? So it's the same thing that I tell my clients when we're talking about how other people are showing up in the world. They're just a barking dog, right? That's what they're programmed to do. That's how they are going to show up in the world. We can't change that, but we can change how we process it inside of ourselves.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. Because you just mentioned it a couple of times, can you tell us a little bit about how your transition, like, because you already mentioned a couple of things, but how was your journey, going through the relationship and then, and coming out of it?
Okay. So as I told you before, the relationship was very abusive, as far as like emotional abuse and gaslighting and control. And then at that time, I didn't know any of this. I had no idea. I didn't even know what narcissism was. I just thought it was like when people look in the mirror and like love themselves, So I didn't really even know that this was abuse because, like I said, he never even like called me names, or he would use things and terminology that was hurtful. Like you're a bad mom, or you don't take pride in the house, and you're a bad Christian, or whatever types of things he knew that would hurt me. But he never like verbally attacked me as far as like calling me horrible names or things like hear verbal abuse in that regard. So it's hard for me to know that this was abuse. And I blamed myself for everything that happened in our relationship. And I was going to therapy. I was going to see my gynecologist because I might be crazy and I might have PMS or PMDD or emotional issues, right? Because these are all the things that he told me. So I was trying so hard to make things better. I was doing everything I could do. Meanwhile, he's like, I don't need to go to therapy. I'm not coming with you, even when I asked for support. So throughout that whole time, I just felt completely worthless. I felt really low about myself, like I couldn't do anything right. Everything I did was criticized, really. I mean, even down to blinking my eyes. Like, I'm not even joking with you. Like, I remember laying in bed one day with him, and he was reading a book and I was on my phone, and he said, "Do you have to blink your eyes so loudly?" And I was like, what? Do people blink their eyes loud? Like, I literally was in my head trying to think, how can I blink my eyes less loudly? I mean, it was just the most ridiculous thing. But at the time, in that moment, I was like, oh, wow, okay, what am I doing wrong? Like, everything about me felt wrong. So throughout that process, and I wrote a book, as you said, and that book was written because I knew after I escaped that I couldn't have been the only person who's ever experienced this. And I was like, people need to know that this is real, and that you can live a life in a beautiful house like I did, with 3 wonderful children and private schools and a husband who made six-figure salary, and be completely miserable. This isn't something that just is for a certain demographic of people. Emotional abuse can hit anybody in any culture, in any race, male, female, doesn't matter. And so I wanted people to know that. So someone told me this is in my book, on social media, had reached out to me. We were chatting back and forth, and this person said, "I think what you're talking about is narcissistic abuse or sociopathy." And I'm like, huh? Like, I totally was completely in denial. Absolutely not. There's no way I would ever marry someone like that. This isn't real. And it was enough, though. It was a seed that was planted. And I went and did some research, and I started learning, and I was like, oh, and the lights just flipped on, and I was completely shocked that this is actually what was happening to me. So throughout that time, then I planned my escape, and it took me about 3 months, and I, under the sort of cover of darkness and not really letting him know that I was planning on doing this, pulled the rug right out from under him and escaped our marriage. So after that, then the healing started, right? Because you can't heal while your hand's still on a hot stove, right? I couldn't be healing while I was still there. So after I was able to get out, I immediately started with therapy. I was with my therapist for about 4 years. I went every single week. I spent thousands of dollars with my therapist, and she was wonderful. And she helped me connect a lot of dots. But it wasn't until I learned about the subconscious mind, wasn't until I learned about controlling my own thoughts and being aware of what I was thinking, that was actually the symptom was the pain, but the source were the thoughts. And then once I did that, I was like, okay, this is the magic. Like, this is how you actually heal. So doing that myself, right? I learned about it through someone else. She taught me, and she also certified me to become a coach to help other people. And through that process has been the only thing that actually gave me like permanent results versus just coping every day and just trying to cope and heal. That's where I am now, because it was so transformational for me. I thought, there's so many other people who can benefit from this. I have to help people. So that's where I'm at.
Oh, I love that so much because it's so important. And one of the things, I mean, I don't love what happened to you because
Sure.
in my case, my narcissistic relationship was only 2 years, and I'm grateful because I had a moment with my sister that where she basically her appearing in my life because we were living in different countries, and when she came to live in the same country as I was, it sort of gave me the strength to leave that relationship. And so that was okay. But going on 20 years, that's heavy. And one of the things that I find interesting, and I hope a lot of our listeners can take away with this, there is emotional abuse out there. And because that's one of the things that I feel, because it's not physical, so you're sort of making it smaller, because I mean, I'm not being beaten up, so it's not that bad, right? But it's still, I feel that emotional abuse can sometimes even go deeper because your wounds can heal, but the emotional wounds take way longer to heal and to transform.
Yeah. And what a lot of people don't realize is that when there is a physical abuse situation and you're being physically abused or sexually abused or any sort of physical abuse, that there's always emotional abuse that goes with it. It's not just like you're in a happy, loving relationship and then somebody is just, hurting you physically. That's not the case. That always happens in tandem. The difference is a lot of emotional abuse victims are never touched, are never physically harmed. And that's the reason it's so difficult to detect, because I remember thinking, man, I wish he would just cheat on me, or I wish he would just do something because I didn't know what was going on, so I thought at least I'd have some reason to get out of this relationship, and I'll just tell you, like, if you read the first chapter of my book, I had a fantasy, an obsession with wanting him to die. I wanted him to die. It didn't matter how. And obviously he's still alive and kicking today, and he's out there with a new wife and all of that. But and you'll see through the transformation of what I went through if you read all the way to the end of my book. But a lot of people experience this, because they're in so much pain, they don't know what to do, and they just wish, oh, I wish he would just hit me one time, or I wish he would just cheat on me, right? Because at least you would have proof and evidence that this person is hurting you. And when emotional abuse is happening, how do you prove that, right? How do you file a police report? How do you document it, right? It's like so difficult for people who are being emotionally tormented to even explain what this is like. I mean, even like things like gaslighting and coercion, and it's even hard to verbalize what this even feels like. And like you said, these are wounds that take a lot of practice to heal. It's not like if you get a bruise that in 3 weeks it's gone. There's a lot of emotional, deep-seated how do I want to say it? Like these memories, these traumatic memories. And then what happens is they turn into triggers, or they turn into anxiety, they turn into fear, lack of trust in new relationships. Like there's so many sort of like ripple effects to it, right? It's not just, oh, you experience emotional abuse and then when it's over and you escape, it's all done. No, there's a ton of other things that come along with that, that people like you and I have to work to shift and change so that we can get back to who we really are and be that, you know, that whole person again that we feel like that we maybe have lost throughout the way.
I love that you're mentioning this because to me it feels, it's like with I feel that sometimes it's similar to trauma because it's such a huge word, and there's this obvious trauma of people having really physical things happen to them, and I'm just gonna as a big title, but then you have traumatic moments from your childhood or from when you're growing up that might not might not just because they're not physical, you're putting them down, like, oh, it's not that bad. It wasn't that bad, but when you look at it, it's really something that's really deeply rooted within you, and it's painful and it's still hurting you, growing up, becoming an adult, it's still there. But you keep asking, because that's one of the things, like you said, you have everything wonderful is around you, but you're asking yourself, why am I not happy? And it's because there's things that want to be healed, that need to be healed, but can't heal because we're in a situation that just doesn't help until we realize that and allow ourselves to actually name it as it is, right, as something hurtful within ourselves.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that. And one thing that you said that made me think was when victims of abuse say, even, and other people must say it too, also to you, but it's when we say to ourselves, oh, maybe it wasn't that bad, or maybe I'm overreacting, or maybe I'm just too sensitive, right? We're almost invalidating ourselves and invalidating what we went through. And so, but that's normal, right? Because I remember doing that too after I left, and especially because you may compare your story to other people's story and be like, oh gosh, look at what they went through. Maybe my situation wasn't that bad. And so it's really important not to compare your abuse to other people's abuse, right? Because that's what other people's jobs are. That they will do that no matter what. People will be like, oh, well, you never got hit, so oh, you never got cheated on, so oh, right. So it's important for us to deal with our abuse in the way that resonates with us, that is true to us. This is my true story. This is my situation, right? Without comparing it to other people and without judging it. It's so important, to not be judging that, not be judging other people's stories, because when that happens, we invalidate ourselves and invalidate our experience. And then scarily, what could happen is you could return to the other person, right? Even though you logically know this was wrong, even though part of you is like, oh, like I know that this person was wrong for me. I know this person hurt me. And then, oh, well, maybe it wasn't that bad, or maybe I was overreacting. And these thoughts start creeping in your head. And so when I was talking about before, those thoughts, we have to be aware of them, right? So if you're saying things like that to yourself, like, oh, I'm just too dramatic, or it's not that bad, other people have it worse than me, right? We have to start actually inspecting those thoughts because we don't want to get back with that person. We know logically that person is bad for us and that it's bad for our emotional well-being, and it's probably bad for our physical well-being. I mean, even emotional abuse creates physical problems in people. I had headaches, I had TMJ issues, I had stomach issues, I had tons of weight loss. I was constantly picking at the skin around my nails. I was had double vision. Like I had to go get MRIs because I couldn't see straight. Literally, like this is all impacted from the situation. I don't have any of that stuff anymore. I mean, occasionally I still get migraines, but I don't have the same level of physical manifestations because of that emotional abuse, because I'm healing from it.
Yes, because our body, I remember my shamanic teacher, the first teacher I had, he always said, you know how the universe works? The universe has a conversation with the body, and the universe, or the soul, tells the body, she's not listening, she's not listening. And then the body says, okay, I'll make her listen. And then, all the illnesses come in, and because we're not being aware. And this is where, where the circle comes back to the awareness that you were talking about earlier, by, becoming aware of what is painful within ourselves, what is hurting within ourselves, and not downplaying it, like you were saying, um, or not just downplaying it, actually ignoring that there is a pain within us. And it's okay that we have that pain, like we were saying before, becoming aware of that pain and then allowing us to just, have it, accepting it, that it's there and that it wants to be healed, no matter if it, no matter if I'm thinking, oh, it wasn't that bad, right?
Yeah, I totally resonate with that. And I truly, truly believe in the mind and body connection. And I truly believe that our time here on earth is meant to be spent in joy and in gratitude and in peace. And that the experiences that we have, though unfortunate and harmful and hurtful as they might be, can, if we let them, can blossom into something greater and bigger. And, a lot of people say, oh, you toxic positivity and things like that, because my experience, I truly, like, I didn't get this feeling like the day I left, right? It happened over time as I was healing.
Yeah.
But I do believe that that experience completely transformed me. And now I can actually look back at it, and I would do it all over again. I would totally do it all over again to reach the point of where I am today. I truly would. As horrible as it was, I would do it all over again, because I'm not the same person that I was back then. And I love the person that I am. I love this person so much. And I would immediately, if somebody said you have to go back in time and redo it, I would be like, okay, I would totally do it again. 100%.
I'm
It's just,
sorry.
not everybody will be there. Not everybody is there, and that's okay. But like you said, acknowledge that emotion that's in you, and wherever you are, just be there. You don't have to like be someone else or move yourself too quickly or try to rush the process. Just be where you are, accept where you are. And then if you want to change it, start being aware, start accepting things, start inspecting your thoughts and doing the practices that will help you achieve that.
Yeah, I resonate so much with this because it's just, yeah, it's a possibility that we have. And like you said, I love that you mentioned the the toxic positivity, because we're not talking about, from now to, from being in pain immediately going to everything is nice and light and bright, like we're not talking about that. We're talking about allowing yourself to, to go through the motions that are part of your process. But once you have healed that, showing you that there's this possibility that wherever you end up, it's going to be a better, like you said, this better place where you truly love who you are and can accept for yourself the path that you went through. I'm with you completely, because for me, whatever happened in my life, the good and the bad, all of that made me who I am today. And I feel that every day that I have, every additional day that I have on this planet is such a gift and such something so wonderful. But I couldn't be here if I didn't have the experience that I had before, right?
Yeah, and that you can have so much gratitude and grace for yourself in that, and even for other people, truly, because like I think about somebody in my life who is a totally different person today than they used to be before I knew this person. And if I judged this person's past, if I looked at it sort of negatively or whatever, how could I do that? Because that path has actually led that person to be in my life in the way that that person is today. And so I kind of look at it the same way for myself. I have to look at other people that way. I have to look at myself that way. And I think that's a really amazing transformation if you can get to starting to accept the path, right? Accept where, like you said, accept the path where other people have come, where you have come. And the other thing that you said that I really, really love is the word possibilities, because possibilities is a very eye-opening word. And the reason why is because if you can just think of other possibilities, right? Other than the things that you think of automatically. Because a lot of times those things that we think of automatically are the things that keep us in pain, and the things that are keeping us in guilt or regret or sadness or anger or fear or whatever. So if we can be aware of those things and then just ask ourselves, well, what else is possible, right? How could somebody else be looking at this? Or is there something else I haven't thought of here? And sometimes that's difficult to do, because if your brain has been on this like repetitive cycle, like a train track, just plowing through, like, I'm not good enough, I'm not good enough, I'm not good enough, right? It's sometimes really hard to get that train to jump to another track, but we have to at least try. We have to at least ask the question, am I good enough? What about me is good enough? Are there things in my life that I've done that were good enough? Right. And so we're just sort of shifting that thought process a little bit. And when we do that, then instead of going down that train track of, let's say it's like through this really scary town and awful, rainstorms and like terribleness or whatever, we just switch the track somewhere else, and we get to see the beauty of the mountains and the meadows and nature and the lakes and rivers and oceans or whatever, right? So it's just shifting it a little bit, just with the question of possibilities, like what else is possible, just like you said.
Oh yeah, I love, like in this case, I love to mention I overcame my fear of the ocean, and because I went through that process of really being aware of that fear. It opened up the possibility of me becoming a scuba diver that goes scuba diving. Like, if I used to have panic attacks with the ocean, and now I love going underwater and seeing this other world, this new possibility. And I think that's something for everyone to remember, or to see, or I hope that I can inspire others to see that there are those possibilities, those what if the world could be, easy. What if I could have lightness in my life? What if I could have a different view of the things, right?
Wow, that is such an amazing story too. And you're going to have to talk to me a lot more about that, because I do have a fear of the ocean. Like, I love the ocean. I love it deeply. I love being near it. It makes me so peaceful, but like going into the ocean is highly, highly triggering for me. But what else? Like, what are the other possibilities? What are the things I could be missing out on? So we're actually going to Hawaii in June. And yeah, so I'm super excited about that. And I've never been there, and my kids and my partner are going. And we're gonna do, what is it, snorkeling. We're gonna snorkel. And I think that's a good first step for me, because I can just stay at the surface if I want. And if I want to swim down a little, I can. But I'd love to talk to you a little bit more about that too. But these are the kinds of things that we can do in every area of our life, right? So if we have a fear about anything, we can explore the other possibilities. If it's a fear of being in crowded spaces, if it's a fear of, I'm going to get an email from my ex and I'm not going to know how to process it, right? Anything, literally. What are the other possibilities here? So I always tell people, just write down your thoughts, right? Just literally, we spend so much time in our head that we have like 60 to 70,000 thoughts every single day. And like 80% or 85% of those are the same as yesterday. So let's start writing some of them down and figuring out what those are, and then start challenging them and exploring what those other possibilities are. And that, I think, is where the true healing happens.
Definitely looking at your thoughts, not identifying with them, learning to let them, pass by. And then at one point you start learning to, direct them to whatever you want to create in your life. And it's so beautiful. That's so magical.
It really, really is. And it's funny too, because the other day, a friend of mine, like, I'm not her coach or anything. She is like one of my best friends from high school. She was struggling with something, and I sort of automatically went into coaching mode. And she said, I have this big long email I want to send to this friend of mine, and I just want to get it out there. And they were having some sort of argument. And she said, should I send it? And I didn't tell her the answer. I didn't say yes. I didn't say no. I said, well, what do you think you're going to accomplish from this? And what's going to happen? Or what do you hope that's going to happen? And, just starting to ask a lot of questions. And then she came to the answer herself. She literally knew the answer. It was already inside of her. And so it's really interesting, because if someone else asks you those questions, then a lot of times you'll know the answer right away. But it's a matter of doing it for yourself, sitting down, writing those things down. And like you said, then you can question it, and then you can direct it. You can be like, you know what? Actually, I don't really like the way that this feels, and I don't really want to be thinking this anymore. So I'm just going to change it. It's totally possible.
Yeah. I love that so much. And I wish we could talk some more, because I really enjoy talking to you. But right now, I feel like we don't want to prolong it too much. Probably we're just going to have to make another episode.
Part two. We can do part 2, and you can teach me how to go into the ocean.
Exactly. But maybe for our, because I completely forgot in the beginning, because we just dove right in. But like, what do you do today? Like, how does your work look like?
So basically what I do is similar to what we were just talking about. After I wrote my book, I became a coach. I work in the subconscious mind and help my clients to reframe their thoughts, to reprogram those thoughts, because, our whole lives we're programmed. We're conditioned from a very, very young age by our parents, by society, teachers, friends, culture, whatever, religion. It's all programming. So we carry that throughout our whole entire lives. And people who are healing from emotional abusive relationships is where my focus is, to help people kind of undo that programming and change it, so that they don't have to feel like they're at the mercy of their emotions anymore, that they are in control and they can feel indifferent to things. They don't have to get triggered by things. They don't have to keep ruminating over their past or the pain or whatever. So my coaching program is really focused on helping women heal from emotional abuse, change those thought processes like you and I were discussing throughout, and really transform, so that they can start to feel whole again, feel self-confident, start feeling empowered, and not be at the mercy of their emotions.
I love that so much. And how does that is it like a special program that you have where everybody can go through with you, or?
Yeah, it's a 12-week program, because it's brain training, right? Because I can't just do like one-time session with you, because I had to teach you how the brain works, and we kind of dabbled in that a little bit here, but there's a lot of practice that goes into it. So it's a 12-week program that, if anybody wants to meet with me, they would just get on a call, and I'd tell you for free exactly what's involved and how it works. And then you can decide if you want to move forward and do it. A lot of people, well, pretty much everybody I've ever worked with is like, this is the thing, like, this is the thing that's helped them heal. So, and that I couldn't be in integrity if I didn't do this work for myself. I do it. I constantly do it. Anytime things come up for me, I work this same process on myself, because I feel it's really important to be integrity with what you're selling to other people and teaching other people to do. I do that for myself as well.
Walk the talk. I love that.
Absolutely, 100%.
Oh, it's so beautiful. So we're going to put all the links below, so you can find the website, and you can find possibilities to connect to Allison, and ask questions, or maybe if you resonated, if you feel like you've been through a similar situation, or if you feel like you've had emotional abuse in your life. And I feel that I feel that a lot of people actually have that, and not putting, finger pointing on anyone, but I feel that just because of the whole way we were brought up, the society it had so many things that it already started as children, that we were already, having a lot of emotional abuse as children already.
Absolutely.
We're just getting started into changing how to deal with kids in a different way, how to bring them up in a more sensitive way, especially. And so I think that a lot of us have gone through a lot of, I'm going to name it trauma that wants to be healed. And that's why your work is so important in every way. So if you felt that this resonated with you and you feel like, hey, I'm up for a 12-week program, I want to reprogram myself. I love that reprogramming word, because I feel it's like our brains are like, like a computer. And every now and again, it's good to take that computer and, to wipe everything clean and then start new.
Yes,
So,
exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. I feel like I say that a lot, is like you're like a computer right out of the box when you're born. And
Yeah.
then when you come into the world, everybody starts programming little thoughts into your brain, and little girls should be this and little
Oh, yeah.
boys should be that, and you shouldn't do this and you shouldn't do that, and like all this programming that's coming from all these different places. And then we end up as adults and we're like, ah, and then it's like, wait a minute, we need to reprogram this. We need to wipe it and we need to start over, and let's change it so that we can feel differently.
I love
Thank you.
that. Do you have any last words that you'd like to share with our audience?
The one thing that I would love to just let everybody know is that healing is not something that just happens overnight. It's
Mm.
not something that is going to be the same for everybody. It's going to look different for everybody. And certain things will resonate with you and certain things will not resonate with you. And that's 100% okay. The biggest and most important thing I could tell you is to practice. Practice whatever it is that feels good to you. Practice doing that, and just keep doing it, right? Because the more we practice, the better we get. So I live my life by that motto, is to practice. Like everything is practice, because it sort of takes away the heaviness and the stress of whatever it is. So if I'm practicing yoga, I'm just getting better at yoga. If I'm practicing reprogramming my mind, I'm just getting better at that. If I'm practicing hosting a podcast, I'm just getting better at that. So if you kind of look at things in that framework, it can really relieve a lot of stress
Mm.
and help you along your healing.
Oh, I love that. There's like almost nothing to add to that other than, yes, that's how it is. Take your time. It's practicing, practicing, practicing.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was so wonderful to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
And to all our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you loved our episode too. If you like, leave us a like, follow us, Oh yeah, we're going to put your podcast here in the show notes as well.
Oh,
And
great.
so if you like to listen in there as well. And thank you for being here. And as always, keep surfing your energy wave.